Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today.
Welcome to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Joe. Hello. How's it going today? I hope you're having a wonderful week. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I'm here again to, of course, bring you some more feel-good, positive stories to hopefully add to your wonderful day or make it better if I can. That's what I'm here for. I have some pretty cool stories today, so I'm just going to jump right into it. So the first one I want to share with you, I found this article and I have to share it because it is super exciting, positive news about COVID-19. So as we know, numbers of new cases for COVID-19 across the world have slowly been dropping down to single digits. It's getting better and better. But 4 places, including a very large city, like Hong Kong. Hong Kong was hit pretty hard by the pandemic, but Hong Kong is celebrating 0 new cases. Pretty cool. So it is one of the most densely populated cities on Earth. It was hit pretty hard with the pandemic, but it has now gone 22 days as of Monday without recirculation of the virus within the country. So the last new case was reported on April 20th. I have to say that is a pretty big step forward for a huge city like Hong Kong. So medical experts have warned that people should keep their guard up. Hiking trails, restaurants, beaches, and parks are starting to open with fewer restrictions, but try to, of course, keep your social distancing and try to stay as safe as possible. So after they eased restrictions in February, they experienced a surge in new cases. So they kind of suffered from what they said the second wave, but it has now been contained, and they are celebrating 0 cases. So Hong Kong's chief executive, Carrie Lam, talks about freeing citizens from quarantine and travel restrictions, and just trying to lift the restrictions up more and more as time goes on. So continuing this trend, there is also no new cases for New Zealand. So New Zealand had accomplished, a complete lockdown for quite a while, and they just lifted that up just about a week ago after Monday because they passed without any new cases of the virus. So in mid-March, coronavirus was responsible for 20 deaths in this Pacific island nation, and lockdowns restrictions are eased a little bit. Many restaurants are still remaining closed and social distancing is still encouraged. But the Director General of Health, Ashley Bloomfield, says that the milestone of no new cases is a cause for celebration and is symbolic of the effort everyone has put in. And finally, there are no new cases in Hawaii. The first time in 2 months, the spread has halted completely. So I guess that's pretty exciting, I have to say. I guess at the beginning of our Starting on May 18th, governors will allow residents to seek reimbursement for expenses if people were impacted by official shutdown measures. So that'll include rent and child care. And then these orders are beginning to be lifted, of course, with low-risk businesses reopening. Honolulu's Director of Community Services, Pamela Whitty-Oakland, says the capital is working with nonprofit groups like Aloha United Way, Helping Hands Hawaii, and the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement government to provide financial support to the most vulnerable communities. It says that these organizations will work with the families and those affected. They will collect receipts and provide reimbursement of eligible household expenses up to $1,000 a month and eligible childcare expenses up to $500 a month. There has also free of new cases in Montana as well. So there you have it. There's some examples that all the hard work and effort that people are putting in is starting to pay off. And, we're starting to see a little bit of the brighter side. So I'm excited. I had to share that. But speaking of another bright side of this whole kind of situation, there was a huge poll that was put out. It was a survey, and the question was, climate change in the long term is as serious as a crisis as the current COVID-19 pandemic? Well, if you agree with that statement and you agree with that question, then you answer the same as 71% of the participants that took the survey just to talk about climate change and the COVID-19 pandemic. So they're saying that people, a huge majority of people are just as concerned about climate crisis as they are about COVID-19. So this was the Earth Day 2020 survey. So it was measured public opinion from many of the world's principal producers, buyers, and populations. And almost all metrics suggest that a large majority of the world's citizens consider climate change an important aspect of moving forward after the coronavirus pandemic. So Chinese participants registered 87% agreement with the above statement. The most of any country. So Chinese, out of all of them, 59% of Americans and Australians agreed, and the smallest majority with only 38% disagreeing. 65% of those surveyed worldwide want governments to prioritize a green economic recovery as their lockdown measures from coronavirus are lifted. Respondents from India, China, and Mexico were empathetic about this directive, with 80% insisting on sustainable, clean measures. And more people, 48 to 44%, said that economic recovery from the pandemic should not subsidize environmental regulations, and any recovery should be environmentally responsible. The survey didn't include only COVID-19 related questions. There were some other questions that people answered, just about climate change and whether, they would be willing to alter some of their habits to help fight climate change. So I guess consumer or lifestyle behavior did not change from the past survey and that they did in 2014. But there were some major fluctuations in other categories. So let me break these down for you. In Great Britain, 70% of those surveyed said the government would be failing them if they didn't take action now to try and prevent the worst effects of climate change. 59% saying they would consider not voting for a political candidate who didn't pledge to take sufficient action to mitigate climate change. 57% of total participants surveyed would avoid buying a product with too much plastic packaging. 80% of the hyper-techno denizens of South Korea strongly agreeing, and 71% of Chinese. So South Korea came in first in another category as well. 70% of East Asians agreeing to the idea of avoiding buying new goods by mending what you have, or buying used products instead, just as another way to prevent excess waste. So I thought sharing these numbers and surveys with you was just kind of interesting because, of course, the pandemic has been the hit of every single headline. It floods our news pages. It's everything that we wake up to in the morning and go to bed to at night. It's our lives right now, which obviously makes sense. But of course, there are other things going on in our world that also need to be addressed. And that is just saying people are taking everything else seriously as well. And, maybe this is something that we can try to turn some things around and make a positive impact at the end of everything. So I just thought I would share those numbers with you because I thought they were pretty interesting. And it'll be quite interesting to see what happens, see what measures are taken and how people kind of follow up with their duties and habits to help fight the climate crisis. All right. So that is all the stories I have for right now. I'm going to take a little bit of a break here. And when we get back, I'm going to jump into some more feel-good, positive stories for you. I have some pretty cool ones today just about, things that people are doing to help the frontline workers, and just other, ways to spread joy during this pandemic. As well, I have a story about the Obamas and what they are doing for the graduating class of 2020. It's pretty cool. I'm a little bit jealous, so stay tuned for that. Thank you.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco, ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Okay, we are back, and I got more feel-good stories to share with you. So my next one is about a family-owned greenhouse called Green Circle Growers of Ohio, and they are honoring America's healthcare workers by donating $1 million in orchids to frontline caregivers in 7 markets that were hit hardest by the coronavirus pandemic. So that would be Boston, Dallas, Detroit, Los Angeles, New York, Tampa, and its home base near Cleveland. So pretty cool, $1 million. That is more than 50,000 orchids that are going to be delivered to those on the front lines at the hospitals, nursing homes, homeless shelters, food banks, and all of that. So pretty cool. So Scott Gieshberg, the co-CEO of Just Add Ice Brand Orchids and Green Circle Growers, says in this extraordinary time, it was important to our organization to find ways we could contribute, and the answer was clear. We realized our nation's healthcare workers have been experiencing some of the darkest days of our lifetimes. If our orchids can provide a bit of joy and color for these very deserving individuals, we felt it was the least we could do during this difficult time. We're especially grateful that we can distribute these orchids in time for Mother's Day. So this was, done the beginning of last week, as many healthcare workers are standing in for family members who cannot visit their loved ones in person. Many are acting as mothers when patients' own moms can't be there. So pretty cool. That's 50,000 orchids that they delivered. That is a lot of flowers. So the transportation services were also donated, and International Paper donated the boxes for the transporting the orchids to all the final destinations. So he says, we hope they can bring these flowers home and they can serve as a thoughtful reminder of how much they are appreciated. Oh, right. So you might know the person that my next story is about, the Food Network star and chef, Guy Fieri. He actually raised more than $22 million to help restaurant employees that have been unable to work during COVID-19, through all the shutdowns across the country. So he created the Restaurant Employee Relief Fund. So that poured large donations from really big CEOs, involved in the restaurant business. So Pepsi, Coke, and Uber Eats, all donated. So he says, my entire career has been in the restaurant business, from bussing tables to flambe captain to dishwasher to chef. I have done it all. I've also spent the better part of the last 15 years traveling this great country, meeting other folks who've dedicated their lives to this business. And let me tell you something, they are the hardest working, most real deal workers you've ever met. The heartbeats of their communities. So he has already provided 40,000 workers across the country with $500 grants to help them get through this difficult period, and more money is being distributed as well, which is pretty cool. What gets even more cool is that Bill Murray is the latest celebrity to join this effort to raise money for the Restaurant Employee Fund, and they are doing a webcast nacho making competition. So between Fieri and Murray and their sons, that's going to be pretty cool to see. So they're calling it the Nacho Average Showdown. So they're doing it along with their sons as well, and they're going to square off in a 4-way nacho making competition live on the internet, and it's actually going to be judged and officiated by other than, of course, Shaq O'Neal. So that's pretty cool. This is going to happen on May 15th at 5 p.m. ET. You can watch it on the Food Network's Facebook page. So hopefully you can definitely check that out. I think I'm going to be checking it out. It sounds pretty interesting. So some restaurants and diners have closed temporarily or even permanently due to COVID-19. And as we know, some are doing curbside pickup and takeaway. But Fieri is urging everyone to order from small, mom and pop restaurants, family owned, those kind of types of business that suffer the most during this time. So he is just sending out that message to go help out those small businesses and small restaurants during this difficult time. But don't miss the Nacho Average Showdown. So Friday, May 15th at 5 p.m. Eastern, Food Network Facebook page. I'm definitely going to be checking it out. So I thought I would share something pretty interesting that's happening in Vienna right now. And it's helping to maintain physical distancing during the pandemic. As we all know, we need to stay 6 feet apart at least. So they did this green maze design for city parks to help people maintain that physical distancing. So Chris Presch is the founder of Austrian design company Studio Presch. He says there is a beauty in solitude and in connection to nature that people in the city often miss. So he came up with this concept for Vienna. It's called Parc de la Distance, and it's basically like a maze in a park, right? It's kind of just like a green maze. It looks pretty cool, and it kind of guides visitors seeking, that relief of, that green urban space. And it's a 20-minute walk through a maze-like structure of different spirals. Pretty cool thing just to even look at. It's quite satisfying, I have to say. But it's all parallel lines of hedgerows and that lead each person on a walk through an enclosed natural world, as he's describing it. And it's opening into broader view of gardens, and then, of course, while keeping that effective social distancing measures in place at the same time. So he says there is something fundamental in spirals, a path to the center, a path to your inner self. So I guess many cities worldwide now are kind of looking at this kind of concept. As we know, lots of parks have been closed and for fears of overcrowding, and people are worried to keep that safe distance when you're out. But this park, it's just, it's gates at each end of the maze, and it's kind of maintained a certain number of people walking at once. And then the total walk is about 20 minutes, and you just go through this maze. You feel, I don't want to say lonely. You feel connected to the nature with making sure you don't have to worry about your distance. So pretty cool. He actually lives and works in the remote Austrian Alps, and he's bringing quite the personal touch to this nature relief during challenging times. He's been trying to come up with some other things as well, and this is one of the things that he has come up with, and people are already starting to catch on to it. And I guess it will come to an end when we can start being closer to each other. But either way, it's a pretty cool way to enjoy nature. So enjoy the beauty of solitude and connection to nature while you can. If you are lucky enough to be in Austria and see one of these really cool maze parks, I'm super jealous, and that's all I have to say. It's that, being connected to nature right now can do wonders for our brains. So pretty cool to see a project that is starting to lift off and hopefully do a spiral effect and maybe hit some other large cities so we can enjoy nature in a safe distance as we go through these very difficult times. It's going to take a while to get everything back to normal. All right, I'm rambling on about nature, but it's something that you really learn to appreciate, I think, during this pandemic, in my mind, at least. All right, so it is time for another break, but when we get back, like I said before, I have a pretty cool story about the Obamas and what they are going to be doing for the graduating class of 2020. I also have a story about a teen who is being rewarded because he did something pretty cool. So stay tuned for what's next. Thank you.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast. All right, I am back, and my next story is about a pretty cool grandma and the impact that she is making on strangers across the internet. So she, during quarantine and all this time at home, she has been live streaming some video games, as in like Call of Duty or, games like that. As we know, live streaming is just that social format where you can you can broadcast live video, and, it's huge all over the internet. You can stream and you can make money off of it, but most of all, you can really spread some joy and you can connect with people across the world, which is, of course, pretty cool. So, particularly, this woman, so her name is Michelle Statham, and, she doesn't like to be going by, Mrs. Statham or even Michelle. She likes to go by her screen name, which is Tactical Grandma, or you can just call her Grandma, she says. But she has been, streaming from the basement, where she lives every day. And she's been living in her kid's basement. She has one grandchild, but I guess her skills of video games online is just crazy. So she's been interacting with people, and just spreading some joy over the internet, over the streams. So her viewers are coming, from all different areas, and she says that many of the people that are, watching her streams and joining her are facing lots of different challenges brought on by COVID-19. Some of them are single parents, some of them are dealing with challenges at school or work. But she says each person she speaks with receives comfort and advice, and just kind of calms she's a grandma. She calms their fears, in the ways that grandmas calm your fears and make you feel good. So her husband, Sean, says she has been helping so many people, from young single moms to college students to inner city youth. She listens and cares for each of these people, all while playing video games. So she's enjoying her games because she is quite good at them, but she's also using it to connect with people and, spread that joy and advice wherever she can. She says that she thinks she has all these positive outcomes from talking to these people, all the gamers, because they feel like they can really let their guard down in a safe place. It's just an opportunity to trust in a relationship of support and understanding that can change lives. And obviously they feel connected while they're streaming with somebody else who's playing the game against them or with them, whatever the case may be. But yeah, she's been really helping a lot of people all over the globe. She says, I'm definitely not the best at gaming or anything, but I love chatting with the community and I love to play. So she has just been playing and spending her time doing that. She's actually has a Facebook page and she's doing all those things. So if you want to check her out, it's Tactical Grandma. Go chat with her while you're streaming your video game online. Now, like I promised, I have a story about the Obamas and what they're going to be doing for the seniors of 2020. So a teen actually reached out to them on Twitter, and now they're going to be giving a virtual commencement speech for the students of the class of 2020. So as we know, lots of high school seniors have been, missed out on all of their graduation ceremonies and big milestones that most seniors get to do at this time of the year while they graduate. But now they all have something to look forward to, because a Los Angeles high school student, he went to Twitter and he asked Barack Obama to give a national commencement address to graduates across the country. And the response actually just went viral, of course, because they are planning to do exactly that. So it's a YouTube special. It's called Dear Class of 2020. It's going to take place on June 6th, but it's not, it's not going to be your ordinary commencement speech. There are actually going to be quite a few stars that are being featured in this event. Lady Gaga, Alicia Keys, former Secretary of State, Nobel Peace Prize winning activist, all those types of people. You'll have to stay tuned and check it out. But YouTube is partnering with Michelle Obama's Reach Higher initiative to showcase student stories and feature graduates around the world. And then they're doing a commencement speech. So they said they got to vote for Barack Obama in mock elections when they were little kids, and they got to watch Barack Obama become the first black president and get sworn in while they were in school. I remember watching that in the classroom and feeling kind of amazed at such a young age and feel like I was a part of history. So that was one of the students, which is pretty cool. So that's going to mark the first time the Barack Obama has given an commencement address since he left office in 2017. So he actually gave more than 20 graduation addresses at schools and universities across the country before. So this is the first one since 2017. I think it's definitely a cool reason to be coming back and giving an commencement speech to all those. Mr. Obama is going to be delivering a commencement message during Graduate Together, America Honors the High School Class of 2020, which is a 1-hour multimedia event on May 16th. That one's going to have LeBron James, Jonas Brothers, Pharrell Williams, and a few other people you will definitely recognize. So that airs on ABC, CBS, Fox, and NBC at 9 p.m. Eastern. So go check that one out as well. There's some pretty cool things online that we can go watch. I also promised you a story about a teen and what he is being rewarded for. So he actually returned $135,000 that he found next to an ATM machine. So his name is Jose, and on Sunday he just visited an ATM machine to take out some money. He's only 19 years old, and he was actually helping his grandfather buy a pair of socks online when he noticed that his account balance was quite low. So he drove to the ATM near his house to make a deposit, and he ended up finding $135,000 worth of $50 and $20 bills. He says, when I first saw it, I kind of stared at it for a few seconds, not knowing what to do. I was very shocked. I've never seen so much money. So he said that crazy thoughts kind of raced through his head, and he was like, is someone going to kidnap me? Is this a practical joke? So he kind of took a little second to collect himself, and he called the police, and he gave them the money, and he actually discovered that the money had accidentally been left behind by a worker that was supposed to be refilling the ATM. So it says this money could have made an incredible amount of difference in his life if he went down the other path, but he chose the integrity path and did the right thing. So that was Officer Simon Drobick, a spokesman for the police. He said, I've seen a lot of stuff in 21 years, but this was unique and refreshing for the department and city. So he is now, it was his childhood dream, has actually been to work in law enforcement himself. He wants to be a crime scene investigator, and he currently studies criminal justice at Central New Mexico Community College. And now he received an unexpected call from the officer that he talked to when he returned the money. He asked, him what what it would be like to considered a hero in his community. And, Jose didn't feel like a hero. He said that the police really wanted to hold a ceremony to honor him anyways. So that's exactly what they did. They were just praising him for the good deed that he did. Local businesses have actually showered Jose with rewards. He's been given gift cards from local restaurants, sports gear, season tickets for University of New Mexico football, courtesy of ESPN Radio. He was also given a $500 scholarship from an electric company. So he's been getting lots of praise for his kind deed that he did. It always is worth it to do the right thing, I have to say. All right, that is all the stories that I have to share with you today. Thank you so much for listening to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Joe. I had an amazing time sharing these stories with you today, like always. Please do not forget to hit that subscribe button to like and follow us on social media and leave a 5-star review. I hope you stay safe, stay healthy, stay positive, and I look forward to sharing more feel-good stories with you next time. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows. From the GSMC Podcast Network, from social media news to marketing news, and even weird news, the GSMC Podcast Network has you covered. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast.